combined with water makes carbonic acid. Acid. That means my pH scale, which goes from 0 to 14, basic, acidic, neutral, 7. My blood should fall somewhere about 7.45. Okay? So that should roughly be the pH of my blood. But if, and think about the amount of cells we have in our body. Nobody even knows. The guess is trillions, right? You were probably taught that in general bio, okay? If they're constantly, which we need them to do, to be doing their job, making a product, they need energy, meaning oxygen to get there, go through cellular respiration. They are producing a lot of CO2. Is that correct? So now, if CO2 gets in my blood and I do not have proper buffering that can occur, the blood will get more acidic. Which direction does it go on the pH scale? Towards 14 or towards 0?
0.
It goes in that direction. Would a drop in my blood pH to this be a problem? Yes. Why? The pH scale is not linear. The pH scale is logarithmic, meaning any drop of a number is by a factor of 10. So that would mean the little pluses, which are creating the acidic problem, if it goes from 7.5 to 7.44, it doesn't just add one more plus sign. It adds 10. Is everybody following me? Because when you read a lab report, you need to be able to understand that. Okay?
So no matter what direction it is, it can go up or down by 10.
Exactly. And the difference is, for bases, they are OH negatives. Now, if you've ever taken chemistry, you know that an equation always has to be balanced. And it will balance based upon pluses and minuses. Okay? Have y'all had chemistry? Okay, so in the blood, this is bad. Other systems of the body, they have a little more ability to withstand it, but not the blood. So, for the most part, we are going to make, the body is going to have buffering systems, and those buffering systems take that CO2 and in the presence of the water, of the blood, they'll make carbonic acid. But they will buffer it and they will then transport this as a buffered ion. And when it gets to the lungs, it encounters another water environment which supplies an OH negative and an H plus. How is it that water can supply an H plus and an OH negative? This is my formula for water. How do I get an OH negative and an H plus out of that? You break it. You lyse it. Because would this not be OH and H? H2O. Remember that from chemistry? So I have the ability at the tissue, at the cellular level, to buffer, and then when I get to the lungs, I have the ability to reverse that, let the CO2 cross the respiratory membrane into that alveolus and be expelled out. And in the meantime, while traveling in the blood, it was buffered, meaning it did not create a pH problem. Is that not cool? That is so cool because we are producing tons of CO2. Think about it, okay? You're sitting here. Lung cells are working, stomach cells are working, whatever cells you want to look at, and for them to work, they got to have oxygen. Oxygen goes in, helps them create ATP. Creating ATP gives me CO2. Got to get rid of the CO2. So there's a lot of CO2 that goes into the system. This is why CO2 is more soluble based on Henry's law, whereas oxygen isn't. Why? Oxygen is only transported on the hemoglobin. Carbon dioxide, I can transport in 3 ways to get rid of it. It is a measure of control for the use of oxygen because not every cell of the body is going to need oxygen all the time. CO2, because so many cells are busy, is in high production. And I need to get rid of that.
So CO2 is more easily like the pass through thing.
Yes. CO2, and when we produce it in the body, is toxic. Oxygen isn't. So our body needs to make sure that we can control that. So, do you guys remember in the salts that we deal with, whether we're looking at sodium chloride, which is what people tend to think of as table salt, but in actuality, it also will have our potassium, it'll have magnesiums. Table salt is a huge mixture of all of them. We just talk about it in the form of sodium chloride because that's the easiest one to look at. But what happens to a salt once we get it into the body?
Is it dissolved?
It dissolves, and the proper term is dissociates, meaning it gives us a sodium ion, a chlorine ion, it'll give us magnesium ion, it'll give us potassium ion, chloride ion, pluses, negatives, okay? That's what makes it an ion. But we've always talked about the use of these ions. But which ones have we talked about? My sodium, my potassium, my magnesium. Have I in any way up to this point talked about the use of the chlorine? Because I haven't had to. But have you ever wondered, and who knows anything about chlorine? It's a poisonous gas. Huh? What? But my body's going to use it? Oh, yeah. In this ion form, I'm going to use it. But not until now. The reason for that, we're going to see it with the kidneys too. That little chlorine that's flying around in the blood that was attached to those sodiums, potassiums, magnesiums that I need for everything else, right? But that little chlorine, what's happening to that little chlorine? That little chlorine plays a part in having the ability to get exchanged for that little positive ion that'll cause trouble in my pH. And it'll say, hey, I'm going to take one for the team. I'm going to help keep the blood buffer, 7.45. And yes, the little H+, we get the buffering. We see that that CO2 that could break apart, that could get buffered, that could get create that carbonic acid. Chloride comes in and says, I will help. This is one of the areas that the chlorine molecule, that chlorine ion, is used. We can't use it in a whole lot of areas of the body, but in the blood to help with the buffering, because our red blood cells are going to contain the enzyme that can help break apart the carbonic acid. When the water and the CO2 mix, did y'all happen to note an H+ that got left behind? And what was it that creates a problem for pH in the blood based on my picture on the board? The pluses. So my red blood cell itself carries the ability to help break that carbonic acid, supply chlorine, and buffer my blood. So now, when that happens, it's a chloride shift because we're using the chloride ion and it's shifting its position. So now, how does it affect the oxygen? In our tissues, where these cells are carrying out their functions, like I try to keep saying, they've got to have energy. Energy in the form of ATP. The two ways to make ATP, glycolysis and my aerobic respiration or cellular respiration, which will occur in that little mitochondria. Does everybody follow me? Glycolysis does not require oxygen. That's why it's called fermentation. Aerobic is termed aerobic because it needs air, i.e. oxygen. And that byproduct is always CO2, the waste. Okay? So the cells are always busy. If the cells were not busy, you wouldn't be here. Because the cell is the basic unit. If the cell's not functioning, the organism's not functioning. Okay? So, that production of CO2. Now, that red blood cell makes a circuit around the body about once every minute. that one red blood